Even though some incredibly valuable products have popped up on Shark Tank over the years, there have been many pitches that the sharks soon learned were complete scams, merely seeking money in exchange for an unproven product or concept. But before we jump into it, make sure you hit that like button so we know who the real Shark Tank fans are. Tycoon Real Estate. This is widely considered to be one of the biggest scams in the history of Shark Tank. Tycoon was pitched by a man named Aaron, who had proven his worth in the world of business. He had been involved in multiple large-scale businesses over the years, making millions of dollars. He was a well-respected man who was one of the youngest regional vice presidents of AT&T and was consistently in the top 1% of sales for many years. This prompted Aaron to write several books that would teach young businessmen and women how to make smart investments, as well as teach them how to manage a company. Aaron remained the VP of a Fortune 100 company for several years before developing his idea for a service known as Tycoon. This was a real estate service that would allow everyday investors to contribute to large-scale real estate transactions, allowing them to invest as little as $1,000 to get started. The idea behind the company was essentially like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, but for real estate. Builders could pitch their ideas for a real estate project on the app and search for investors to contribute funds to have the project realized. However, this is where Tycoon stands out among other crowdfunding projects. With Tycoon, the investors would retain ownership of the funds that they invested. This would allow them to invest in various projects, being able to sell their stake in these projects at any time, potentially making money on their investments as projects became more popular or profitable. Think of it this way. Let's say you invest 1% into a new apartment building that plans to make $25,000 a month from its tenants. Without making things too complicated and getting into the realm of fees, expenses, and upkeep, this would essentially mean that you would be entitled to 1% of the profits from that building each month, which would equate to a stable income of about $250 a month. When you factor in the idea of large-scale buildings that house multi-million-dollar companies, it starts to make sense why this would be a good investment. However, Robert and Mark were quick to point out that projects like this virtually never work out. It becomes increasingly difficult for investors to sell their stake in the company without losing money as a result of fees. Investors would also have to find buyers for their share of the company, similar to selling a home or office space on the open market. Kevin also pointed out that services like this already exist, known as REITs or real estate investment trusts. However, Aaron quickly replied, "REITs aren't sexy," suggesting that this product was a sexier way for the everyday person to invest in real estate. Mark called Aaron out and exposed his company as a scam, claiming he was only looking to gain profits of fees and investments from poorly educated individuals, as there was no realistic way for investors to get their money back after investing. Giving AT&T shady business dealings in the past, it's pretty easy to understand why the sharks were so harsh on this guy and refused to trust him. In the end, Aaron left without making a deal, though his company was purchased by a third-party investor just a few months later for an undisclosed amount of money. Track days. We can't help but wonder if the curators for Shark Tank knew how bad this idea was, but allowed it through the gate simply for entertainment. Two men, James Lovatola and Brian Pitt, appeared in a Season 4 episode of the show, requesting $5 million in exchange for 34% of the profit from their product. Though they weren't offering a product at all. Instead, they were pitching a movie and requesting that the sharks invest in the film so that it could be completed and sent to theaters nationwide. Though there were a few big problems. The script for the film had not been completed. There were no cast members lined up to take part in the film. This was a concept idea for a film, though the two had no means of actually bringing the film to fruition. It didn't take long for the sharks to laugh off the idea of the film and send the two guys packing. Though Kevin made sure to let them know that this was a horrifically bad idea. We just wonder what must have been going through their minds of these two men when they decided to pitch the film to the sharks. The sharks are not movie producers, they're investors, inventors, and entrepreneurs. While the pitch for this film aired on ABC several years later, the movie never did, and rightfully so. We can't imagine how this film would have turned out, given how unorganized these guys were. We don't wish for anyone to fail, but we hope these guys are able to learn a valuable lesson from their failed Shark Tank pitch and continue in their lives with some vital information about the business world. But at the end of the day, we can't help but wonder if this movie investment was nothing more than a well-orchestrated scam. Breathometer. While this product seemed great on the surface, we can't decide if this was a total scam or a simple mistake. Truth be told, it seems to be a little bit of both. This was a device that was designed to quickly, easily, and accurately read your blood alcohol level. This would be extremely important for someone who has been drinking, as they could easily determine their blood alcohol content before getting behind the wheel of a car. The device was so impressive that all 5 sharks wanted to partner on the deal, in exchange for 30% of the company. Though once the show ended, it was determined that the product was not as accurate as the sharks originally thought. Complaints were running rampant, but the sharks did virtually nothing to solve the issue. The company carried on for a short time before the FTC got involved and shut the company down, forcing them to give full refunds to all of their customers. While it seems as though the sharks may have been misled when they invested in the company, we can't help but wonder why they did essentially nothing to rectify the issue, ultimately backing away from the product and accepting no blame. We wish the crew would have done further research on the product before allowing it to appear on the series, as this product should have never aired. It could have easily cost thousands of people their lives if they were misled into believing that they were under the legal limit while driving. We don't say this often, but we're happy to see the company closed down and refunded their customers. This was an absolutely dangerous product from the very beginning. It's difficult to point fingers when there is such a small amount of evidence available that can determine who's at fault here, but we're curious if the investor was the one pulling the scam or the sharks. At some point during production, the company had to have known that this product was dangerously inaccurate, though they covered this up to make a quick buck off their customers. It would be difficult to suggest that this was the fault of the sharks, as they likely didn't have any prior knowledge of these mistakes, but it certainly makes us wonder. Scott Jordan. This entry doesn't involve a product, but rather a person. Also, it doesn't seem like the product was the scam, but rather the pitch was somewhat of a scam. Scott Jordan appeared on Shark Tank in one of the earlier seasons of the show. Throughout his presentation, he did his best to take control of the sharks, being extremely combative with them. He called one potential investor insane and told two of the other sharks they were out before giving them a chance to revise their offers or statements. The sharks were in complete disbelief by the man as he walked into their studio and began to act as though he ran the show. Jordan created a clothing brand which he dubbed Scott Vest. The company specializes in making outdoor vests that are designed to hold various products or gadgets in their seemingly infinite number of pockets. These vests are designed for use by avid outdoorsmen, giving the wearer instant access to all of their tools or devices without having to carry around additional clothing items, such as bags or satchels. Regardless of his controversial presentation, Scott managed to grow his company from $3 million in annual revenue to over $10 million in just 1 year. The company is still active today, though we can't say for sure what their annual revenue has grown to. Regardless, it seems like Scott can retire a happy man, as he has already made millions of dollars from the brand. We can't help but wonder if his ridiculous pitch on Shark Tank was merely a marketing ploy to get more people talking about him. Interestingly, after the show had concluded, he continued a feud with Mark Cuban off the air, making his brand even more popular than it already was. It seems as though his appearance on Shark Tank wasn't merely to get investments from the sharks. Instead, it seems as though he scammed the sharks into inadvertently advertising his product, even though he's one of the rudest, inconsiderate guests they had ever seen. Regardless of his intentions, he seems to have succeeded, even if he didn't have a winning pitch with the sharks. There are a variety of products that have appeared on Shark Tank that could be considered scams. There have been dozens of products that simply don't do what they're advertised to do, as well as products that don't live up to consumers' expectations. However, these last few products prove that some people are just in the business to make money, not caring who they step on or hurt along the way. While we wish the best for all these investors and companies, we hope they learned a valuable lesson from their time on Shark Tank.